Right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 o'clock, so if we can make a start. First of all, welcome to this community forum here at the Town Hall. It seems quite a while since we were here, because, so we say, we've been out on the road, but thank you very much for your attendance tonight. If I could just, first of all, introduce one or two people. My name's Anne Elliott, and sitting down here on the front row is the Deputy Chair, who's Councillor Jason Atkin. We have with us Councillor Rose, Leader of the Council. We have Councillor Albert Catt, Deputy Leader. We have Dorcas Bunton, Chief Executive. We have Sandra Lamb, Head of Corporate Services. Karen Henriksen, Head of Resources. Sorry they're all sat with the back to you. We have Ashley Watts, Head of Community and Environmental Services. This, of course, you've just been talking to, is Jim Fern. He's Head of Communications and Marketing Manager. And later on, you will see Roz, who's going to take sort of the minutes and write everything up. On the agenda tonight, we have from Dorcas some good news. Karen's going to do what do you think of our efficiency plan. We have the review of the public conveniences from Sandra. And we have the Derbyshire Dales Leisure Centre review, which is Ashley. And then right at the very end, which everybody really enjoys, is the questions and answers. So, and if I could say, if you've been to the last couple of community forum meetings that we've had, you'll notice that we have a councillor missing, and I've heard he's watching tonight. So that's Councillor Swindle. He usually does one of the presentations, and he's sat at home because he's just become a father to a little boy. So if we could send our congratulations to him and his partner, Katie, on behalf of the forum, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'll hand you now over to Dorcas for our good news.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm just going to start the evening off by taking you through some things that the District Council's been involved in over the last few months since we last saw you, and hopefully it's good news that I'm telling you, or we believe it's good news anyway. First off, we've refurbished all the gyms, the gym equipment in all 4 of our leisure centres. They've all been done. We've a new studio in the Arc for spinning, for those of you that enjoy that. And we have noticed that participation has increased as a result of this. So we're very pleased with that. In Hall Lays Park, we've converted one of the tennis courts, which wasn't well used, into a multi-use games area, which we are noticing youngsters are now going on there and using to good effect. So we're very pleased with that. Ashbourne Thursday Market was not doing very well at all in the marketplace in Ashbourne. We were getting down to very low occupancy rates on stalls, so we've moved that to Shrovetide Walk, which is the area in between the library and Waitrose. And certainly during the summer months, we saw a massive increase in stall occupancy and the public attending. It's dropping off a bit now, as is normal with markets during the winter period. But because it's done so well, we are looking, when we've been consulting, on maybe moving the Saturday market there as well, and we'll be making decisions on that shortly. We've also awarded a contract to a market company to run artisan markets once a month in Ashbourne on a Sunday, and I believe 2 have taken place so far, and they've been extremely popular and well attended. So get yourself down there. We did a spring clean during 2016, and we continue to do that. We continue to support community groups who want to do a spring clean in their area. We'll give equipment and help support those initiatives. And that's proving very successful as well. Just from our own performance point of view, we measure certain things to make sure that as a council we're performing well, and one that we do is how quickly we pay invoices. A lot of our suppliers are local businesses, so it's obviously very important to them that we pay up on time. and I'm pleased to say that we are very, very good at that, and we do pay, as you can see, 99.65% within 30 days, and indeed the majority of those, over 70%, are within 10 days. Minor planning applications, we are ahead of target on that in dealing with nearly 78% within the 8-week period for determination. Business advice, we have one business advisor in Derbyshire Dales, and she's extremely active. And as you can see, in the last 12 months, our business advice service has helped 22 local firms gather in £800,000 worth of funding through the LEADER initiative and other grant initiatives. And that's creating 72 new jobs in Derbyshire Dales. She's also supported 26 new businesses starting up in Derbyshire Dales, and a further 101 firms have been getting business advice from us. You've probably seen some of those reported in the local press. CCTV, we've tendered for the new equipment in the 4 town centres, main towns in Derbyshire Dales. They are up in Matlock, Bath. They are going up in Matlock this week, next week, at the moment, and in Wirksworth. And in Bakewell they go up in early December. So again, it's brand new state-of-the-art equipment, very good visuals that we're getting, and they are there for us to look at and the police to use should they ever need to. Vulnerable people, regeneration, we've been working, as I think we've reported to you before, with the residents' associations in the Hurst Farm estate, and with them we've managed to get an investment of £200,000 investment from the DCLG in helping us work with them to regenerate the area. With that money, an officer has been employed who is looking at the whole area to see what needs doing and working with the residents in doing that. We also collect council tax on second homes, a large proportion of which, as you know, with our council tax goes to the county council. But with the council tax on second homes, we have reached another 2-year agreement with the county council where they will give us that funding back to carry out various projects in helping vulnerable people in housing situations. It also funds some of our officers who work on rural enabling housing and things like that. Our homelessness team has been awarded the bronze level of accreditation for the DCLG standard, and we're now working towards the silver. We've been working in partnership with Derby City Council and all Derbyshire authorities. We've led a project that has now resulted in a 2-year post that's going to work across the county, working with all councils to help bring in additional housing investment into the county. We've completed 59 disabled facilities grants, and we continue to get applications, and we use up all the grant funding that we get for disabled grants from the government. Our building control team were finalists with 2 schemes that they were involved in. The Sudbury Courtyard, which was the actual winner in the the best small commercial project category at the East Midlands 2017 Building Excellent Awards, and the other one is the Jack Rabbit building in Ashbourne, where they were shortlisted. We've given £10,000 to Matlock Community Vision, community group who's working, as you know, on looking at the Bakewell Road scheme, and we've funded them with £10,000 to help them with their viability study that they are carrying out. We've also given to Derbyshire County £10,000 to help as a contribution towards the work that they're doing and the feasibility work that they are doing on the Ashbourne Bypass project. And finally, we have a very active community, and we support that with various activities in villages, etc., throughout the Dales, and we've supported 1,500 people with that programme of work. We also have a very active Walking for Health scheme. We do dementia walks, and the latest addition is some Nordic walking taster sessions, which are proving very popular. And I think that's me done. Do you want me to take questions now, if there are any?
If anyone does have a question, we will take them now, or otherwise, if you want to wait until the end, then we can do it then. But does anyone have a question? Mr. Bromley.
Yes, we fund it, and we have a CCTV officer who helps maintain it. But it's mainly there for use by the police should they need it.
Saying that at the moment most of the CCTV cameras in Matlock are switched off.
We're replacing all the CCTV cameras at the moment, and I believe in Matlock at this very moment in time they're being replaced. So they will be switched on and working.
Gentleman here, can you just talk into the microphone for us, if you
Sure,
would?
of course. You mentioned the disability disabled facility grants. What's the budget for that for this year, please? About?
I think it's about 430,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. The lady at the back there, thank you.
You mentioned under the business action the Leader Initiative and grants. What plans are there to replace those in the future? Since they're EU grants.
I might ask Councillor Rose if he wants to respond to that.
If you're talking about the Leader European funding, obviously you know the situation with Brexit. That continues to 2020 anyway. The government have guaranteed that. And we are all pressing very anxiously to make sure that a replacement scheme for rural areas such as ours comes into being, because it's been very effective, as you can see from what's been said. So I agree with you entirely. We'll probably need your support in the near future, but a lot of lobbying going on.
Thank you.
Do we have any more? Just on the presentation that we've had, yes. Right, you can, yeah. Just hang on for the microphone. There we are.
With regard to the disability, I was in the car park at the back of Wilkinson's a few months ago, and a disabled lady who parked in the disabled bay asked me where did she park. So I said, I'm sure you don't have to park when you've got a blue badge. And we looked, and there's two new signs. So I said, well, I'll go to the pay station, which is at the opposite end of the car park. I said, don't you go, so you'll get knocked over. And I was amazed to find out that disabled people now have to pay to go in your car park, which I find is a little bit ridiculous, because I went back, I got a ticket for her, I went back, and I said, if you walk across there, which you got a walking frame, I said, it's terribly dangerous, but I said, the good news is, if you make it and get back, the council will give you another hour to park. Now, you issue the blue badges, and I said to the lady, park outside. She was only going to Wilkinson's. Now, it was approximately 100 yards to the pay station. Now, I feel it's disgraceful that you should ask disabled people like that, who struggle anyway, to go across that busy car park. And I hope that all the disabled people will park outside on the road where they can park for 3 hours for nothing. Now, it's obviously financially led. Now, I feel your council, to do that, your finances must be in quite a state. And I wondered why you've come to that decision to, I would call it almost discrimination against disabled people.
Yes, we do charge and have been doing since the 1st of April for disabled parking now. We did consult on it some time ago. We published it very widely. We also took soundings and consulted with disability forums, and they themselves were not against us charging for disabled parking because, as they say, having a disability doesn't mean that you can't afford to pay. And we took advice from the disability forums on where the disabled parking spaces should be. And so we did take advice, and that was where they suggested the parking spaces should be.
Did you want to come back? Yeah.
It's not a question of payment. I've got disabled people that will give every penny they've got to be able-bodied. The question is, in that car park, a disabled person's got to walk 100 yards across a busy car park, and all you're getting is £1.35. Now, any disabled person will pay that. Now, you issue the blue badges.
We
So
don't actually issue the blue badges, the county council does.
the county council. But when they're issued, why not say to disabled people, we'll give you another badge and charge you £10, £20 or whatever, so they don't have that distress parking in that car park.
As I say, we did take advice from the disability forums, and that was where they advised the parking spaces would be best suited.
Well, I don't know if there's any disabled people here, but we'd be interested to see what their view was.
Do we have any more questions?
You mentioned that you're installing new CCTV cameras in Matlock. I mean, in my opinion, antisocial behavior and crime is on the increase in the town, and to an extent this has been helped by licensing bars and restaurants till 3 o'clock in the morning and allowing people to drink till 5 o'clock in the morning. Whereabout are you installing the CCTV cameras? How many of those would you have, and are you targeting the right areas?
I'll ask Ash to answer that.
I can actually give you the list after we've finished, but I believe that there's 5 cameras within the town, and they're on in the main area, so the roads in and out of the town. Also, where we have congregation of people, usually at night time, but the positioning of the cameras has been done in consultation with the police, but afterwards I'm happy to chat with you and show you the positionings. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay then, if we can move on now to the next presentation, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Dorcas. We now have Karen, who's going to talk to us tonight on the efficiency plan. Over to you.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about the council's efficiency plan. Those of you who've been before might remember that over the last few years we've faced significant cuts in government funding, which are set to increase further in the coming years. We've done some financial planning, and that's indicated to us that we need to save £1.7 million over the next 3 years, and that equates to about 17% of our expenses. So yes, our finances are in a very difficult situation. You might ask, how are we going to achieve savings of £1.7 million? And what we've done for that is we've produced an efficiency plan, and I'm going to show you that this evening. What the efficiency plan is, it's a sort of schedule really, setting out our ideas for savings. At this stage, the figures in it are rough estimates. They're just initial ideas that we're going to explore. Most of the things within the efficiency plan would require public consultation, and some of that has already started. Nearly all the things will require a committee decision by the councillors as well. So this is your chance to see the things on our efficiency plan and to give us your views. This slide shows an overview of the proposals. At the top you can see that by 2021, that's 3 years' time, we need to save £1.7 million. And we've put our savings into 4 categories: service reviews, service changes, transformation and additional income. and in the next few slides I'll explain to you what sits within those categories. If we achieve what we expect, the bottom line shows that we should be in a surplus position for most years, except 2021, where we've just got a little more savings to identify. No, they're each year. Yeah, but basically, if we make a saving in the first year, obviously some of that will continue. Yeah. If yeah, if we save the 1 million in 1920, then in effect that's $1 million towards the 1.7 million we need the next year. Because what we're trying to do is make ongoing savings, not one-off savings. So this slide shows the savings we're hoping to make from service reviews. Service reviews are where we step back and we take a good hard look at a service, and we look at what it does, we look at who delivers it at the moment, whether the council needs to deliver it, or whether it would be better delivered by someone else, whether that will give us a better service and savings. And the main areas that we're looking at for savings from service reviews are leisure centres and public conveniences. And Sandra and Ash, who are here tonight, are going to tell you a bit more in their presentations about how we're hoping to make those savings. So you can see from the screen that the biggest element of our savings, £500,000 a year, we hope will come from the outsourcing of leisure centre management. And substantial savings as well, £275,000 from our review of public conveniences. The next area for our savings is what we call service changes. So on this one, I won't go through all of them unless you ask me questions, but the bigger ones, the markets review, we've been looking at our store markets. As Dorcas mentioned, some of them haven't been making a profit, and so we've looked at things like relocating them, working with town councils maybe, and so on. And we hope to save £40,000 a year from that. The biggest one on that slide relates to a review of leases. So the council owns various properties that it rents out to different businesses and organisations, and by reviewing those and the arrangements within those, we hope to get additional rent and make savings of £425,000 a year. Transformation is the next area. Officers at the moment get paid mileage allowances, and some get a monthly allowance for using their car for work. We've done a rough review and identified that a lot of the rates that this council pays exceed those paid by other councils. So we're going to do a review looking at rationalising those, and we hope that will save us £40,000 a year. The BSU and support service savings, they're savings from the central services within the council. So things like central admin, HR, accountancy, and so on. By outsourcing some things like leisure, naturally the back office support from those will reduce. So we're hoping to make savings in those areas. And the next area is additional income. So instead of cutting services, one of the ways we can help achieve our savings target is to raise additional income. So we've already done a consultation on charging for car parks that are currently free, and we hope that that might raise us £60,000 a year. The council tax premium for empty homes. At the moment, Dorcas mentioned we can charge a premium for second homes for council tax. We have also got the power to charge a premium for empty homes. Some other local authorities nearby have done that, and they've found that it encourages those homes to be brought back into use rather than lying empty. So we're looking at introducing that. We would actually generate a lot more in council tax than the £10,000 a year, but again the bulk of that will actually go to the county council. So that's just our share. And finally, there were other some other areas of income that we're looking at, such as planning fees, pre-application advice. That's a new service we've offered since 1st of April this year that's been very successful. So we think we can get more money on that. And also things like looking for charges for waste receptacles and so on. So our medium-term plan, as I said earlier, shows that we need to save the £1.7 million. I hope I've demonstrated to you that our efficiency plan should show us how to do that. And if we can achieve the things in our efficiency plan, it means we don't have to be looking for cuts in other services, you know, like mowing the garden, the parks and gardens, and things like that. And as I said earlier, at the moment these are just plans. There will be public consultation, and members will have to make a decision before they're implemented. So, what do you think of our efficiency plan? You can tell me now. You could use the feedback form, or you can email us later.
Does anybody have any questions for Karen at the moment? Lady at the back there.
Sorry. A couple of questions. The planning fees, I thought they were set by government.
The basic planning fees are set by government. The pre-application service is a service that we provide and lots of other authorities provide. It's a discretionary service.
Right. It's just you had planning fees and pre-application separately. I just the other thing, the empty homes, when does that come in? How long does the home have to be empty?
I think at the moment you get a three-month relief.
Because I mean, there is an issue with elderly people first going into care or whatever,
Yeah.
and you know the children trying to sell the house and mum won't. And what do you do then? I mean, it can be very difficult. I mean, I agree in principle, because it'll make homes come back onto the market or for rent. But I think there are issues with the elderly in particular.
There are issues, which is why we want to bring it. We're not just bringing that in. We want to bring it in with a package of other measures that will help get empty homes back into use.
Mrs. Rachel Tansley. Here we go. Just wait. Can you wait for that? There we are. I think you're on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One of the efficiency plans was gully emptying, I noticed. Can you sort of tell me any more about that? Because that's quite an important one. Are you going to stop doing it?
The short answer to that is yes. Because I don't know if you spotted it, but that was actually a cost on the efficiency plan rather than a saving.
Right.
And what that recognises is that what we're planning to do is hand the gully agency that we currently have from the county council, hand it back to them. But the £20,000 extra cost reflects the fact that at the moment we get an administration fee as part of the payment from the county council. So it's covering some of our overheads. Now when we pass the agency back to them, unless we want to make certain officers redundant, there'll be an additional cost if we want to keep those officers.
Okay. There's just one more question. The car allowance could you sort of fill in a bit more about that? Is the car allowance for everybody just to come to work, or is it if you're actually going on business trips?
No, it's for business use.
Business. Okay.
Thank you then. I think Mr. Mum's got one at the back there. There we go.
Just on the question of car allowance, how much do you pay?
The rates vary. Certain officers get an allowance every month, and other officers get an allowance based on how many miles they do.
Yeah, but how much is it?
I don't know the exact amount at the moment.
Because there is a limit of 45p a mile,
Yeah.
according to HMRC. I wonder whether your people got more than that.
Some of the allowances are above that, which is one of the things we've flagged.
Thank you then. Don't worry. I mean, we can come back to this at the end, so don't worry. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you. I'm now going to hand you over to Sandra, who's going to talk about the public conveniences. Thank you then.
I'm not sure you're ready for this tonight, but we'll give it a go. Normally, at these community forums, I've been accompanied by my colleague Tim Braund, who's been with me from the start on this review of public conveniences. Tonight, he's at Birchover Parish Council, heavily involved in public conveniences again, so he's with us in spirit at least. We've been called various things during this review, but he has insulted me tonight, saying that he's left Eric Morecambe behind to talk to you. So I will be on my best behaviour, honestly. But this presentation split into two halves. Firstly is about the purpose of the review, what we've done so far, and the next bit is about where we're at. So the first thing is to think about that the District Council spends £470,000 on 26 public conveniences in the district. And it's a discretionary service. So as the little symbol there that Tim put up, the elephant on a very soft ball, there's a balancing act to be had. So we've got a heavy burden on a very small public purse. And what we have to try and do is balance the cost of some of our essential services, like emptying your bin, looking at food hygiene, against the potential for us to provide a discretionary service in terms of public conveniences. But we're very aware that Derbyshire Dales is a destination. We're known by several thousands, 4.2 million day visitors a year come to the district of Derbyshire Dales. They enjoy outdoor activities here, and toilets is probably one of the things that we all comment upon when we visit new places. We can all have a very pleasant and a very unpleasant experience in a public convenience. So we have that in the back of our mind whilst going through this review. Trying to find ways of saving money is about maintaining services as well. So we've got all that in the forefront of our mind when conducting this review. So when we set off on the review, we set some objectives for us to look at, and we came up initially with 5 objectives there. These are all of equal measure, and as they say in Strictly Come Dancing, they are not in any particular order. But one of the things we're looking at is the potential for charging for use. You'll be very familiar if you visit mainline railway stations, you'll be asked to pay anything from 30p to 80p to use a facility. Other authorities are using this as another measure of keeping their facilities open. There's also a potential for what's called a community toilet scheme, and this works in very small areas where local cafes or pubs are willing to open their facilities up for visitors without them having to make a purchase. They will have a sign in the window to say that their toilets are available free to use. Obviously they don't work in high volume areas. You can't have several hundred people all piling into a cafe at once, but maybe it does work in some of our very small villages and towns where with the willing sponsors we could open up that kind of scheme. That would be in return for some kind of monetary value for them offering their facilities on our behalf. The next one is sponsorship. Now, I guess it's a long shot, but you could have these toilets are sponsored by McDonald's. That's highly unlikely, but what you see more of is when you get into public toilets, particularly motorway service stations, you will have seen them, that behind the door there is some paid for advertising and sponsorship. That's the kind of thing that could generate money to keep some of our facilities open. So we're looking at that option too. The final one on the list is closure. I think we've always seen that as an option of last resort, but we have to do a critical examination of our public convenience stock in order to make that kind of recommendation. And then another one emerged as we're going through the review, which isn't on the list, but I think it's worth mentioning, and that's looking at our facilities in perhaps a bit more imaginative and commercial viewpoint. We do have some buildings that are totally dedicated to public conveniences at this moment in time. But that's not to say that moving forward they couldn't perform another function. For example, combining a bit of retail with a public convenience. And some of our facilities may lend themselves to that kind of activity. So we're looking at those too. As part of the review, we want to make this as robust as possible. So what we've tried to do is find out some very basic facts that we haven't assembled so far. And the first thing is to find out how many people actually use our facilities. We've got 26 in all. We've got some in the major towns. We've got some in the very small parishes like Birchover, where my colleague's gone to see tonight. And we've been using electronic people counters that we've affixed to the doors of our public toilets. When a person enters, they break a light beam and that records that someone has visited the facilities. In the early stages, in fact, our first experience where we monitored people going into a facility in Bakewell, the manager, who was very proud of these devices, reported the first figures back, and half a person less came out than went in. And it took some time for us to work out how that was possible. And we thought it must be a little person, perhaps a child, that walked in on the way in and was carried out on the way out. But fascinating figures there. And the range is quite diverse. We have one public toilet that records about 80 visits a week. We have another one that records over 9,000. So the breadth and scope of this facility is immense. Interesting facts, lots of quiz sheets you could have on the number of people that do visit our toilets, and I think you would be surprised. But based on the number of visits that we have to these public conveniences, the 5 on the list there appear on the face of it to be the most viable for charging. That's given the number of people that regularly visit those premises. So we're going to use that data to get some facts and figures together on the financial viability of actually charging for use of public conveniences. And the Community Environment Committee have given us authority to go out and fact find and make sure that there is a financial case, or if there isn't, to report back on it. So we'll shortly be going out to tender, for example, on what we're calling a coin-operated entry system, similar to the ones that you see in the railway stations. So we'll be able to get a capital cost of procuring this equipment. We'll know how many people have visited the toilet. We've also gone out to visit other areas that have also introduced charging, and a little posse went to Newark. Some of you may have visited that area. Lots of similarities to Bakewell. It's a market town, it has its own livestock market, and 5 public conveniences in the perimeter of Newark town are actually run by the town council. Newark and Sherwood District Council has devolved that responsibility to the town. They've introduced charging facilities and they run them quite successfully. So we've been learning from them and other authorities that have done this before us. And what other authorities have found is that you can calculate the number of people that visit a facility, but there's an immediate resistance. As soon as people see that they have to pay for a facility, they go somewhere else. So we're trying to calculate what we think is a reasonable damper on those figures to work out reasonable projections of potential income. When we've got the cost of the equipment, we'll do a financial calculation. We've also got to work out how we're going to manage the transfer of money that people put into the machines. We're getting a quote, by the way, for cashless payments. People are now used to using their telephones and watches to make payments without actual cash. We're also out to consultation, which is now closed. That closed on the 20th of October, and we've had 1,054 responses to this kind of exercise, and I'll tell you the range of questions in a moment. But the consultation on the community toilet scheme, is that a goer? People have given their opinion on that. And what we also have is criteria for the assessment of closures as a measure of last resort. But if you volunteered to take part in our consultation, you'll see that we've not just focused on the charging or the closure element. We've taken the opportunity to get some feedback from you on what you actually think about our public toilets, because I think we all have to be honest and say that some are better than others. We may do our very, very best to clean the facilities, but we cannot be responsible for the first member of the public that does not respect them. And I think that's the market that we're in public toilets. We can do our level best, but we're very subject to the particular habits and traits of the people that visit them. So we've asked the public to say, what do you think about our public toilets? How clean do you think they are? What about the decoration, the state of repair? We've also asked them, would they support the introduction of charging? And if you do, what would you expect in return? As part of the working group, I'm often ribbed because my particular piece that I bring to the party is, my personal view is, if you're going to pay for something, you have a higher expectation. And I think if the District Council were to introduce charging, we should offer something better in return. And I think most people would expect that. So we've got a real wealth of information that's come back from our 1,054 contributors. They've told us what they want, and they've judged us on our current condition. The criteria used for assessment of closure of last resort, we have to put an element of realism here. We have very high costs proportionate to use. So if we went back to our facility that had 100 visits a week, if we're spending 25,000 running that facility, we have to put that into the balance. So what is the cost of running the facilities proportionate to use? We also have to think about backlog of repairs. We had asset condition surveys in 2015. There are repairs waiting to happen, and we have to be realistic about whether it's worth investing in a particular facility, knowing the extent of the backlog repairs, or is there another option? And some of our facilities are tired. We have to be reasonable about that. We could also think about the location of the toilets, and are there others in the nearby vicinity? We haven't cornered the market in the provision of public toilets. The Peak District National Park Authority has public toilets. Derbyshire County Council runs public toilets. And are they all in a similar place where one of us could back out and let the others continue? Peak District National Park Authority has one public convenience where it charges. It has a particular strategy which is unique to the Peak District National Park. All their toilets are linked to car parking, and the income from the car parking pays for that particular toilet. That doesn't work in Derbyshire Dales. Some of our toilets are in the middle of villages without any other facility. There aren't any shops. There's nothing there apart from the village that people enjoy coming to and perhaps walking. They've got one toilet where they charge because the land around it is owned by the National Trust. It's at Dovedale. You may have been there. That belongs to the Peak District National Park, and you pay 20p. As part of our consultation, we have asked people what they would be prepared to pay from 10p upwards, and I don't think I'm giving the game away by saying it's fairly obvious that about 20p is about the acceptable level, although some people visiting toilets on the railway network are paying 80p. Multiple coin options doesn't seem to make much sense to us at this moment in time. So where we are now, we'll have the 1,054 comments back from the consultation, a lot of number crunching to do there. Lots of white space has been used by the respondents, so they've all given us their opinion coming out of the sphere of just the normal tick boxes. We're obtaining prices for the charging devices. That will be a formal tender process, just for the 5 facilities that we said, and we're going to pull this all together for a report in the new year. We'll probably go to the Community Environment Committee in February. So I hope we've tried to explain that this is a robust piece of work. No decisions have been yet made. The working group which I belong to will make recommendations. We're trying to give them as firm a foundation as possible, but at the end of the day it will be your elected members that make the decision. And happy to take any questions on that element.
Thank you, Sandra. Has anybody got a question on spending a penny? Mr. Barker.
Oh, thank you, Sandra. This might seem like rather a silly question, but it isn't really. Have you considered season tickets? Now, the reason I ask that, that you have stated that there are many elderly people in the Derbyshire Dales, and you may not know, Sandra, but I know that elderly people have to go more often, and that's local people, not visitors. That's local people coming into their village or their town just to shop. And it's just a silly question, really. But I just thought you should be aware that there is a demand from the local people in the town as well, because the blurb I've seen about it is you always talk about visitors. The toilets are visitors. Well, the toilets are for local people as well. Thank you.
Yeah, they are. Just to explain, a little grin that spread on my face there, David. It's actually Ash on the front row here, who's itching to remind everybody that I go on the hour, every hour. So I'll put myself into the elderly camp, and I would welcome a season ticket. But I am aware of some authorities that have a little bit like the Oyster card, where you have prepayment. We haven't factored that in yet, but I will take it away with me as something to have a look at.
Lady at the back there.
Sorry to come in again. When you go out to tender, I would really press for you must have contactless, because the joy of that is that more and more people will be using it. In 5-10 years' time, everybody will use it, and it means you're no longer stuck at 20p. You can put it up to 22p or 23p, and it won't make any difference to taking the money in. It does allow you a lot more flexibility in the future on charging.
Yeah, it is at the moment included as an option and a separate option to the tender figure, because we are aware that in Derbyshire Dales contactless sometimes has to go with a mobile phone network, and it may not be possible in all of them. So it may be that we have to pick and mix depending on the mobile networks, but it is on the list.
Just hang on for the microphone. She's just coming back around the back of you. There we are.
You mentioned community toilet scheme. Is this something that's existing or that you're thinking of bringing in? Can you explain it? It's a potential one.
I've written to some small town areas, looked on the map, tried to find some cafes and restaurants that I know have toilet facilities, and I've written to them and said, what do you think about this particular facility? I've had one reply back from a hotel, which is part of the walking district. It's the Peveril of the Peak Hotel. Say we already open our doors to members of the public who are coming on a walk, who don't have to stay with us, they don't have to buy anything, but we let them use our toilet. If businesses come forward on the basis of the consultation and they're able to offer facilities for male, female and disabled, they would qualify under the current proposed scheme, and they would get something like £500 a year to help contribute towards that. It isn't suitable. If you were to close all the toilets in Matlock, for example, and rely on the businesses here, would be in real trouble. But if you're looking at somewhere, pick one out of the air, Hartington, around the Market Square there, we do have a public convenience, but there are other local facilities that do have toilet facilities, and I'm sure that some members of the public will just nip in there now. So this is actually recognising what happens and perhaps offering a small revenue grant to help them along. I certainly do when I'm somewhere thinking, oh, I'm going to have to nip in there.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm giving too much of myself away here.
Yeah.
Some kind of, yeah.
Apply to public buildings like churches, for example.
Yes, if they were able to offer that facility.
Yeah.
Yes, we would look at favourably at them.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Burton.
Thank you. I personally am in favour of charging for toilets, but what I'd like to know while we're doing the consultation is where will the money go that is contributed, and also what benefit will it be if you're taking the money and then using it? It almost strikes itself out. So, you know, I think you have to look at it in many different ways.
Okay, so the whole exercise of the public toilet review is to save money, is to reduce that £470,000 down as far as we possibly can. So charging might reduce the bottom line overall. It may enable some of the facilities to kind of wash their face and pay for all of the costs involved. But until we've got all these financial figures together, I can't tell you exactly how much of that balance we'll be able to achieve. But certainly charging is a way of keeping a facility open and reducing the overall burden on the council. You with me? So we're trying to chip away at the 470,000 it currently costs. It would stay. It would help pay for public conveniences, either the ones that are in charge or elsewhere in the district. So the whole purpose of charging is to help pay for public conveniences. It wouldn't be sidelined anywhere else. Obviously, if it made a massive profit, we'd need to look again. But we're not there yet in terms of the financial equation.
Are we all done? Oh, Mr. Green.
A couple of things concern me about this, and one is the element that you mentioned that you could use some of the facilities into multiple use, such as small resale units. Would that involve selling those that real estate to a private interest?
It may do. That would be part of the commercial element we'd be looking at. Some of the elements may be more viable to enable someone else to run the facility and the conversion in one package.
So I could see, for example, the units in Bakewell Market being very attractive in that respect, and certainly the units in Hall Lees Park. But 5 years down the road, once you've sold this, it's been converted into a burger bar or whatever, and the public convenience, the retailer says, well, you know what, less than £2 a go, I really can't afford to keep it going. How are you going to safeguard against that happening?
That I didn't mention was the potential for community asset transfer, where some of our facilities may be transferred to another public authority, like a parish council. We've been talking to those, and that would be one transfer that maintains the facility. That would go with a restrictive covenant to say that those facilities must always be a public convenience. If we're looking at the more innovative solutions, it certainly wouldn't be a toilet block like Matlock Hall Lees Park, because I don't think there's any scope there for that to add any value in terms of a retail offering. But it may be an underused facility where we can see this potential to convert it into another use and have toilets as a connected feature, and we would want to protect that as part of the particulars of any disposal.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say did you say you got two? No. Right, thank you then. Well, I think we've done. Thank you very much, Sandra. You can dance off now like Eric Morecambe to Bring Me Sunshine. We now have Ashley Watts, who's going to talk to us about the leisure centres. Thank you, Ashley.
I am. Okay. I've given updates previously at the area forums on the leisure review, and in some ways this is no different. It is a brief update as to where we are in the stages of procuring management services for our leisure centres. But just to go back to December 2014, where we started the review, I'm not going to go into service reviews in depth because I think Karen and Sandra have both covered those, but we asked ourselves three fundamental questions, and they were: does a service have to be provided? Can it be done by others other than Derbyshire Dales, if it does? And also, what standard or what level of service needs to be provided? So we started that, and we did what we referred to as phase one of the review, which was to consider the internal operations and where we could make efficiencies and improvements there. So we did that over 2015, and they came into play throughout that year. And then in January 2016, we presented 5 options to members after having a period where we'd worked with external consultants who are specialists in this field. That's a consultancy firm called FMG. They work across the country and had been involved in a number of projects of this very nature. So we presented 5 options to our members, and when we talk about our leisure services, there's essentially 2 elements to it. You've got your leisure centres, which we've got in Ashbourne, Bakewell, Matlock and Wirksworth, but we also have a sports development function which focuses on rural activities, outreach and the health promotion side of the service. In December 2016, we'd managed to reduce the 5 down into 2 options for members to choose from. Those 2 options were to outsource, or option 1 of that was to outsource the leisure facilities but retain the sports development function. When we say outsource, that is to a private provider of leisure management. The second option was to retain the sports development function in-house, but then to look to work with a community for a community asset transfer for Bakewell Swimming Pool and Wirksworth Leisure Centre. We'd done some work in the past, and those who are familiar with the Wirksworth Learner Pool, we'd done an asset transfer a few years before that, and that is proving to be a successful approach. In December 2016, our members approved the recommendation to outsource those facilities to a private contractor but retain the sports development function. Since that time, we have been through a period of consultation with users, non-users, partners, clubs, members, staff, and others who are involved in the service, such as the Education Authority. And what we did in that process was to try and understand what was important to those people in terms of what our leisure services provided, not just in terms of the service, but protection of prices and so on. And some of the things that we included in that specification are listed above, and they are the contract terms. So how long did we want a contract to run for? And we looked at what the industry norm was. We looked at what was relevant to us given the financial challenges that we were facing. And what we have decided is that we will have a 10-year contract with the option of a further 5 years, because we knew that 10 years is good for us, because if the contract is going well and we have an extension option, then we can pursue that. However, if the contract isn't, we're in it for 10 years. We know that within the industry, contractors are not looking for anything less than 10 years because they generally want to invest. And it takes around 10 years for them to recoup some of those investments. The pricing policy that we looked at, we took that from the consultation, and we took that, and throughout the workshops that we've done with our elected members, it was very clear that there were certain things that needed to be protected, one of which was our concessionary rates. So people who are on low income, disabled users, under 16s, so on and so forth, we wanted to make sure that that specification protected the prices for those people, because there was a concern, although we don't believe it to be necessarily the case, that when a private contractor comes in, they just hike up the prices. What we've got to keep in mind is you don't have to use the leisure facilities, so it's in nobody's interest to outprice people from visiting them. That being said, concessionary rates was something that we wanted to make sure that we had a handle on. Programming, again, was another area that we wanted to be quite specific on, and wanted to ensure that we protected use for our local sports clubs, for swimming lessons for schools, for swimming lessons for children in general as well as adults. But there were certain areas that we thought that we'd done well. We'd worked over the years to ensure that we provided a good service, a good level of service and availability, and we wanted to ensure that that remained within the contract. The opening hours, we refer to them as core opening hours, which is our current opening period. What we didn't want is a contractor coming in looking to trying to make savings and just reduce those opening hours, so we have protected those. Maintenance and life cycle costs are part and parcel of a contract, and if you think of the facilities that we've got, as technology changes, as buildings suffer wear and tear, there's significant costs in upkeeping those facilities. So we put options in there for the contractors to look at. Again, energy, possible savings to be made or different technologies to introduce, but we wanted to ensure that there were certain standards that were maintained within that. We also, and jump into the final bullet point, which is performance and review, we currently benchmark ourselves against other local authorities and competitors, and we wanted to make sure whoever was going to come in was going to be performing. So we have a set criteria or expectations that we want to see that contractor achieve, and that is generally focused around reducing inactivity within the Dales. We know that across the Dales we perform pretty well, actually. You know, we're always in the top quartile, often in the top 10% of the most active districts in the country. So we do very well. We wanted to retain that. That was important to us. And that helps maintain the links that we do in rural communities and with underprivileged groups. Going back one, the surplus share agreement, this is something that we've added in there because if the contractor finds himself in a position where they're delivering an excellent service, they're increasing the footfall through the leisure centres and the revenue coming into that, what we wanted to do was make sure that there was a level that, should they achieve it, that actually some of that comes back into the authority to help pay for the cost of running the service. So any profit that is made as such would be split between the contractor and ourselves. So there's an incentive for them to deliver a good service and get as many people through the doors as possible. Once that specification was drawn up and it was approved by members in June, in July that contract was then put out to advertisement, and it was advertised through the official journal of the European Union, Source Derbyshire, which is a platform that many contractors will look at to see what contracts are available, as is Contract Finder. It's it's almost like a search engine for contracts. We started the evaluation of those bids about 2 weeks ago. There's a significant amount of work involved in that, because each bid has what we refer to as method statements, so essentially chapters covering all the aspects that we were looking for within that contract that we wanted those contractors to deliver on. We're currently 16. We've done 16 of those. We've got another 4 to do, so we've got another day on Friday and a few more days next week before we get to a point where we finish that evaluation. We then have a negotiation period with those contractors. So things that we've picked up on throughout the bids that we're either unsure of or we think that they could do better, it gives us an opportunity to have that discussion with them, and then they get an opportunity over the festive period to refine that bid, to come back to us at the beginning of January to make an improvement. That may not be a financial improvement, hopefully it is, but it will certainly be focused on finance and service level improvement. Once we've done that, we'll do the evaluation of those last submissions, and we'll be looking to award the contract towards the end of March. We'll then have a period of handover where we'll work with the contractor, so they're familiar with the local issues that we have, how the facilities operate, the staff, so on and so forth, and the implementation of that contract will begin in early June. I don't have any more information, but I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Do you have any questions for Ashley? Lady at the back there. Yep.
Regarding, thank you, dear. Regarding the ARC, I do go regularly. There are problems.
I'd like to say yes, I should go more often.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do I look as if I should?
No.
They don't give tickets there. I find the way they do the money very haphazardly, but that's not the point I really want to say. There's no tickets really. They seem to bring the money into open things. It's a bit, not terribly business-like, actually. The bridge, how long is it going to be? Now, I have a particular problem. It was actually on Tuesday, and I go out at 6 o'clock, walk down the road, it's wide open. I don't expect mileage to have to walk down the road over a gravel mesh, which is also dangerous, and the streets are everywhere, also dangerous. Particularly if it's getting dark. And morning and night, that bridge is something of a winding place. It must be paid slowly to get to the house, must be a year. You have to walk right down the road and down the slope to go for a swim. There's no parking outside, only for disabled people. And I don't think I should have to walk from the top of the hill down to the swim back. Any side, particularly for the winter.
Okay, yeah. Can't defend some of that, to be quite honest. We were hoping that it would be up and running before it has been. We've had some difficulties in sourcing some of the fabric for it. The difficulty that we've had before is how it eroded, so we've had to get material that we wouldn't have the same problem with. It's a bespoke bridge, so we've had to have certain things fabricated to suit that. I am told that it should be done by the end of this month.
But there's nobody working on. There's not been anybody working on that for months.
No, we are waiting on certain parts of it arriving. It is still on, and you know, we do get complaints, and rightly so, and we are working with other officers and the contractors to make sure that it's done, but I can only apologise for this.
Don't you think it's a long way for people, all elderly people, to walk from the top of the hill? Anyway.
I do, I really do. And it's the same for young families having to walk down. yes, you're right. It's coming to dark nights, isn't it? And it's an unfortunate situation, but we are trying to remedy it, and I am told that it should be done by the end of this month.
Some people park there now. Is that an offence? It is yellow light, I think. I think.
We do try to work with them. We do leave notes on cars at times, but you must appreciate, obviously, the leisure centre staff are leisure centre staff. We have asked for traffic wardens to be present at times, and they have done. We have done some work on that area, but people will park there. We have it during big events. All we can do is try and encourage people not to do that on there.
Sorry, can you just talk into the microphone, because you may be
Sorry.
having trouble just
Um,
picking you up. Yeah.
The last week or so, I've parked, well, at least once at the hotel over there. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they're Premier Inn. I'm sure they're not very pleased, but nobody says anything because of the wall.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you then.
Could I just add something? I went to walk yesterday and the bridge was open yesterday morning. As I'm aware, yes, I certainly used it and other members of the public were too.
Do we have any more for Ashley? Mr. Green? That's fine. No, keep coming.
Yes, thank you for that. Part of the sort of quality of experience when you go to a leisure centre is the kind of motivation and knowledge and morale of the staff who work there. You covered off quite a lot of things that you put in your invitation to tender. What's going to happen to the staff? Will they continue to work for the council? Will they start working for the outsourcer? And is there any protection for their terms and conditions, and also the qualifications required to work in certain roles in the sports centre? For example, a level 1 coach at this, a level 2 coach at that.
That's a good question. Firstly, yes, the staff are protected. They will transfer as part of the management process. So when we hand over the service, the staff will transfer, but they are protected, as are their current terms and conditions. Their contracts are protected. If some of those employees decide to change roles, then they will move on to the contracts offered and terms and conditions offered by that contractor. I think it's safe to say, and I had concerns about this with a number of services and spent time visiting in 16, I think, authorities we visited, and we met with the staff, we met with the managers as well as the heads of service and the contractors. What I would say that was clear from those visits is the investment in those staff. Private contractors, I don't like to say this, but quite frankly, they're better at it than we are in terms of providing a leisure service. And they do develop, they have the finance to develop services and their staff to stay on trend. Leisure is currently a very aggressive market. There's a lot of things that are happening in there, not just in terms of technology and making sure that staff are au fait with those, but different classes that come on, the level of coaching that is required for certain sports. They make sure that all their staff are on that. And I have to say, and I can say it with confidence, I think the investment in staff and the experience for the employees will be enhanced to what it is already.
Well done. Well, thank you, Ashley. And a big thank you to Dorcas, to Karen, to Sandra and to Ashley for those presentations tonight. We'll move on now to question time. Oh good, we've got one or two, look. Mrs. Burton.
Thank you very much. I'm talking about Hall Lees Park. It's a wonderful park, and we have many things that go on in there, and it really is marvellous. And the staff are very, very good. They keep it as best as they can. But there's just a couple of small items that wouldn't cost a lot of money the bandstand, when it's going to be painted again, would they paint it green rather than white? Because if you go and look at it now, it's filthy. And if it was painted green, you wouldn't see that muck. And it does make a difference, and our bandstand's great. And the other thing I would like to, many years ago, I did ask about skateboarding having a couple of lights throughout the winter, because they can't go on there. And when they don't go on there, there's trouble in town and different things. So a couple of lights round the skateboard for them to be, I mean, they could be switched off at 9 o'clock at night, but I do think it's something that is good for the youngsters of the town, and they can't do it in the dark.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton.
Thank you.
It's all right, I'm just making sure you got the
We'll
microphone.
probably have to come back to you regarding the colour of the bandstand, because there may be some conditions under the heritage that we need to comply with. So we need to have a look into that. Yeah, I'm not aware of what the specific conditions are, but we will have a look at. Yeah, thank you. We will look at that. With regard to the lights, I do get your point, but in some ways it helps police itself as well. When there are no lights, we do have or have had skateboard parks in other areas where lights have been provided, and what that has done has led to people congregating in there. And unfortunately, it's people who don't want to use it for the purpose that's there. So you generally get congregation of views, you get an increase of antisocial behaviour. So there is a balance to be struck with that.
Going on to Mr. Barker.
Well, my questions, I've got two questions. They're both actually about Hawleys Park, about the bottom end. Now, staff will know that there was a fire at the workmen's facilities there some months ago. All we've seen is a Harris fence round it, and it's been left. I wonder why. The second question that we can put at the same time, about 5, 6 years ago, the wall around the parish church was rebuilt, and you're probably aware one side of the churchyard does have a cliff face. At that time, a fence was put round for safety. That fence is still there. Now, what is happening there, please? Thank you.
I think that's Ashley again.
Thank you. With regards to the ranger station, Mr. Barker, there was significant damage there, more so than was first appreciated on the initial inspection. That's obviously costly. There's an insurance implication in terms of making sure that we can cover the costs for the work, but that's a substantial amount of work that is going to take place there. Yes, it is taking a while, but we needed to cover the insurance issues first. With regards to the fence, I'm not quite sure about that, so I'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed unnecessary because, I mean, the rock face continues round along Pictor there, and that's not fenced off. I don't see why it needs to be fenced, really. I think it was just put there at the time of the work was being carried on there, when it was obviously needed, but it's just been left, doesn't it? It seems such a pity. It looks so untidy and, you know, not up to District Council, obviously their District Council standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Mr. Mummery over there, look.
What's the latest situation with regard to planning in Corder Quarry?
Do we have a taker on that one?
I don't think any of us here can answer that at the moment. I'll come back to you on that. I have to find out whether the state of the planning application. I don't know whether we're waiting for one or not. I'll come back to you.
I've got to say it has been going on for about 17 years.
Yeah, oh yes, I'm aware of that.
I don't know how many planning applications there's been, but there doesn't seem to be any getting there. Can I ask on the last planning application that went in, the houses that were built on the cliff overlooking Sainsbury's, was that the same company or the same individuals that are connected to Corder Quarry and also the planning application at Snitterton?
I think it is the same developer. Yes, yes.
It is, because originally the ones on Corder Quarry, I don't know how they got planning permission, but that was a builder's dream, building large houses. I don't know what, probably £4 million worth. And then I understand that the profit from that job was going to help them on Corder Quarry. And then I read in the paper that they said they hadn't made a profit, which a big question mark. So I was just wondering where it goes from there.
I'm going to have to come back to you on that because none of us here tonight are au fait with where we are on that one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you then. Ros is just behind you with the microphone. I was just looking for you. There we are.
Well, hi. I've got two questions, actually. The first one is, on all your planning applications, there's always a consultation reply. And I'm very concerned that, related to Tansley, what I'm speaking about, on the consultation reply, the CCG are always mentioned. And yet, we've had two planning applications, one for 49, and there is no response from the local CCG. We've got one for 27 in at the moment, and there's no response as yet from the CCG. Now, the one that's gone through had gone through without any CCG comment. Now, Tansley's 2.5 miles from Matlock, and our nearest doctor is in Matlock. And to get an appointment, and I keep banging on about this, I've just tried to get one, 10 days the earliest. And there's obviously a problem with funding in the northeast district CCG. And I'm wondering why Derbyshire Dales aren't insisting, because they are in charge of planning and they're in charge of making sure that all these houses that are going to be built have all the infrastructure, are letting applications go through without ensuring there is any contribution from the local commissioning group. So that is one of my questions, please. My next question is about play areas. And we have one in Tansley, which is very tired, on the village green. I've spoken to Derbyshire Dales about this, and there's obviously no funding, which you've been telling us about. You are responsible for it. Our parish council cannot afford to take on the responsibility of it. We could afford to replace various pieces of equipment. And that's probably something we would come to ask you about. And I was wondering if that would be a way forward and you would still carry on maintaining or doing your checks on the play area. Again, play areas are something that should be allocated within planning applications, and we are having to ask your officers to ensure that money is put on one side for play areas. Housing's going through without the proper infrastructure yet again on this one as well. Could you help me on those two, please?
As regards the CCG and the clinical commissioning group and the requirements for GP surgeries when there are developments going on, without sounding too brutal, that is not a district council responsibility. The responsibility for determining whether there is more requirement for GP surgeries as a result of a development is the CCG's responsibility. And we do, on every planning application, speak to the CCG or ask for their comments and what requirements they have of infrastructure. And we are, as much as you are, we determine what happens with their responses. If they don't respond, they don't respond. It's not for want of us asking them.
Can I just come back on that? I just thought, as a planning, basically, planning is down to Derbyshire Dales. And planning, making sure all the infrastructure, and health is one of them, is provided for all of these sites, I would argue is your responsibility. I think all of these, and it's no use nodding your head, Councillor Rose, and saying no, because, it is. If you're putting the houses there, that is infrastructure, and you are responsible for infrastructure. And you are sadly letting all residents down, because infrastructure, all you're bothered about is sticking houses up, and roads and infrastructure are secondary.
You'll be well aware through the work that we've done over the last year on the local plan consultation, that as part of that we had to develop an infrastructure delivery plan. And part of that was consulting with the CCGs, with the highway authorities, and getting their comments and their thoughts and their considerations of what infrastructure was required. We are not the health authority, we are not the highway authority, we do not have the expertise to say what infrastructure is required. We are dependent on their contributions, and we do pursue them for their contributions. If they don't give us those contributions, we have to work with what we've got. On every planning application that comes in, we look at what contributions are required from the health authorities, from the CCGs, from the highway authorities for their infrastructure requirements. If they don't tell us, if they don't respond, or if they tell us none is needed, that is the basis we go ahead on. With regards to play area, I will ask Ash whether you've got a comment on the play area.
Thank you. Yes, I get your point. There's a number of play areas across the district, as you probably know, but as you've heard this evening, the financial pressures are not easing. So we have to look at different ways of ensuring that we protect such facilities. And what we have done is tried to work with parish councils or other people to maintain them. I appreciate what you're saying, that as a parish council you can't afford to do that. What I would say is that as a district council, whereas previously we've been able to access funding, external funding to support the improvements, we don't have access to that at the moment, but other groups do, community interest groups or a constituted group that would be willing to take it on as a responsibility, either through the community asset transfer. We have helped those groups source external funding. We do have the expertise in-house to help put the bids together, and there is a greater probability of that kind of group, that model of group, accessing funding more than we can. So we see that as a way of protecting those facilities by working with communities to retain those services.
On that basis, it would be given to the community.
Yeah, that's what we try and do. Yeah, and it's proved successful in some areas, and it's not just with playgrounds or play areas. We've done it with other things. We've done it with bowling greens, for example, and they do work. You know, that's the current model. That's what's working at the moment. In time, I'm sure that will change, but as it stands, external funding is available to community groups or constitutions who are looking to protect.
Thank you for that one. Does anybody have another one? Gentleman at the back there, look.
Yeah, again, this is to do with antisocial behaviour and crime in Matlock. I mean, it's a small town, there shouldn't be none, because it's a fantastic place and people come from all over the country to visit Walk. But any of you who haven't been on Dale Road Friday and Saturday, well, please come and see what's happening after 12 o'clock. And the problem is that bars are licensed to serve alcohol after 3 o'clock in the morning. And it just gets out of control. And at the moment we've got 2 new premises which have applied for planning permission. And I don't know what's going to happen, but well, I hope that the council would reject that. And question I've got, I mean, what is being done to tackle antisocial behavior and crime, and what is the power of the council to withdraw licenses if such activities take place?
I think that's a hard one because we've not got anybody from the police here tonight, but can anybody take that one?
Is that we sit within a Safer Communities partnership, so we do liaise with the police and work on antisocial behaviour or on initiatives to try and reduce antisocial behaviour, but it is the police as an authority that would have to tackle that issue. We do try and promote schemes such as Pub Watch, where you have clients, let's say, who don't behave as you would wish, and if they are ejected from one premise, then other premises in that area are notified of that. And we do work with the police, but it very much is their responsibility to do it.
It does take the police very often half an hour, 1 hour to arrive. I don't know where they come from, whether it's from Nottingham or Derby or elsewhere, but do we have police presence in Matlock?
Yes, we do.
Why would it take half an hour to arrive from the police station?
I don't think as a district council we're in a position to comment on that. It's a police matter, but yes, we do have police.
It is an issue, and I think the council should understand and try to help with this issue.
Back to our next partnership meeting.
Very good.
You know, I'm sure we'll pass your comments on to the police on that one. Thank you very much. Mr. Bunman.
Just going back on the disabled car parking, to help disabled people, rather than have to try and walk across that car park, can I suggest that the pay station is moved somewhere nearer for the disabled people? Because one day there'll be an accident, somebody trying to get a disabled person to get through all those cars.
We take your point on board. I think I'd like to understand the level of complaint. I am aware of this issue that's come through a local ward member. I have to say I've not had any complaints about that directly, though.
Well, if
so
I
before
was
we start
disabled,
taking measures like that,
fortunately I'm not, but I would park out on the road. So what's the point in charging disabled people?
Thank you for that.
A couple of minor ones.
Okay, if you got the microphone.
One is I noticed over the last year or two, that the recycling bins which are to be used by the community, there was one in the park, there was one on Artist Corner, they've gone, they've disappeared. I'm aware that most of the houses have blue bins with blue lids, but the only recycling facility we have is Sainsbury's. It gets full to the top, it's overflowing, and I don't know if there's a reason for taking away the recycling facilities, and lots of the bins as well. Lots of the bins along town have disappeared. Is there a reason for that, and can we have them back?
The areas you're referring to, we call bring sites, so people used to bring their recycling to dispose of that. What you will have noticed over the last few years is an introduction of different receptacles, so different containers, so you can recycle from curbside now. So whereas we used to have a company go and collect the recycling from there, because of the introduction of your food waste, your blue bin, your green bin, and a separation of general waste, there was less of a need for them, so we've reduced the amount.
Another one, sorry. Speed limits. Speed limits in and out of Matlock. We have just down in front of the co-op is 20 miles per hour. At the same time, cars which come from the old boathouse, which is surgery at the moment, it's round the bend. People go often with 40, 50 miles an hour. And it's a dangerous spot because people come round the bend and it's an accident waiting to happen. Has the council have a power to put a speed camera or anything, or no? it's nothing to do with you. Okay, just
No, I'm sure we'll pass that one on first to the police, and of course it's Derbyshire County Council.
On the next meeting, probably would be good to have a representative of the police, and because
We
those
d-
are
We
important.
certainly do try. We do try to get them here, I can assure you. The lady at the back there.
Why is it that some can park all day on Woolley Road, Imperial Road, this is just an example, Wellington Street, all day from there 8 o'clock in the morning, all day, and they're parking free, and yet you have to pay, as you say, that you've disabled, on the car park. Why don't they have season tickets to use this? I collect a friend on Imperial Road regularly. I can never, seldom get in near the house, which means I've got to park on the yellow line opposite for it to touch to the car. They're there all day. I could go at 8 o'clock in the morning, right up to 6 o'clock at night, and there is, as often as not, there's no space anywhere on Woolley Road or on Imperial Road, unless you just happen to be there and somebody moves. But they're there all day. Why are they allowed to park free?
I'm afraid that's a public highways issue. That's a county council matter.
But why is it there's some joint thinking?
We can take these comments back and pass them on to colleagues at county, but that is a county matter.
Revenue there. If they had to buy a season ticket to put their car there 50 weeks of the year, then there'd be a tremendous amount of revenue from that day. I would have thought it was very obvious that they could have a ticket, a yearly ticket.
Back to the county.
Well, who would? I mean, do you have any liaison between the council?
Yeah, absolutely. But this is a county council function, not a district council function. So where comments are raised regarding the county council, we do feed that back.
But it's all the same. But it's still ratepayers' money, isn't it? You need to get the money from somewhere. Whoever collects it doesn't really matter.
Martin, can you just hang on for the microphone?
The County Council will not accept that their staff who are parking on local roads need to be penalised at all. They think that everyone has a right to park on local roads. They've tried experiments, they've had surveys of residents to find out who would support parking permits, and unfortunately the County Council insists on them being in zones, not individual streets. So where people may be prepared to pay a small fee to have a right to park on their street, that's not the way the County Council operate. They insist on it being in zones of streets. And on Matlock Bank, where it's a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 slope, whatever, people aren't very happy when they have to walk half a mile from their permit and pay a fee at the same time to get their shopping back home. So there's no answer apart from expecting or hoping that residents will support a scheme. And what we find out, because the County Council insists on it being in zones, that the residents won't support it, and therefore the County Council will say there's only 20% support and therefore it's not viable. So they're not introducing these schemes in Matlock. In other places, Chesterfield, there are areas where it works, other towns as well throughout the country, but not in Matlock, unfortunately, because the problem is caused by mainly one employer, namely the County Council. And it's been tried several times. We've had several surveys. They haven't been done very effectively, I don't think, but we've criticised that, but that's the way they operate. And unless someone finds another way of carrying out these surveys, then this sort of restriction will not happen, and that residents and visitors alike will have similar problems for years to come trying to park on local streets.
Well, I'm sure Sue will take those comments back for us. Thank you.
Well,
yes, do you want to come back with that one?
Obviously, as the county councillor, I've certainly been thinking about this for some weeks now, and I've been approached by various residents because the frustration levels are really high. Now, you kind of go round in circles with it, because we'd all like to see some way to solve the problem. The criteria, as Martin says, is as it is at the moment, but one of the criteria is that it has to be self-financing. At the moment, they certainly will not consider any scheme that isn't self-financing. And when the last survey was done, this was one of the main things that came up, that there were that the area that they were talking about was so wide that there were various streets, including the estate that we live on in Megdale and Sheriff Fields, where we have no problem at all with county council people parking. So obviously the return rate there was practically zero. So I am going to be in contact with the county council officers to see if we can have another discussion, but it's not an easy problem to solve.
Thank you very much for that one. Do we have any more questions? No? Well, can I thank you all for your attendance tonight, your participation. It's been very much appreciated. And please drive carefully home tonight. But if you could fill out the yellow form, we would appreciate it, and a little bit of feedback. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.